The night had settled gently over Hogwarts Castle, wrapping the ancient stone walls in a blanket of moonlight. Stars shimmered in the sky like tiny lanterns, casting their glow upon the vast, still waters of the Black Lake. A soft breeze whispered through the tall towers, brushing against the windows of the Gryffindor common room, where the warmth of a crackling fire danced across the cozy space. Inside, the castle was quiet. The usual bustle of students had faded into silence as curfew passed, leaving only the soft rustle of parchment and the occasional flicker of candlelight. The enchanted ceiling of the great hall had long since turned dark, mirroring the starlit sky above. Even the portraits along the corridors had grown drowsy, their painted inhabitants settling into peaceful slumber. But somewhere deep within the castle, in the heart of the dungeons, where cool air lingered and shadows stretched long, a subtle mystery awaited. In Professor Snape's old potions classroom, now overseen by Professor Slughorn, a faint shimmer of magic pulsed from a forgotten corner, barely noticeable, like the heartbeat of something ancient and wise. Tonight's story follows a gentle, curious journey into this magical world. As you relax and settle into comfort, let the soft hum of Hogwarts guide you through a tale of quiet discovery and wonder. This is not an adventure of danger or urgency, but one of peaceful exploration where the only challenge is the gentle unraveling of an age-old secret. Now, if you enjoy stories like this and would like to experience more calming journeys through the wizarding world, feel free to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon to stay enchanted. Your presence here is always welcome, and I hope this tale brings you peace and gentle dreams. Take a deep breath, feel the warmth of your blankets, and let the castle's quiet magic surround you. The night is calm, the stars are bright, and the story is about to begin. The Gryffindor common room glowed softly under the golden light of floating candles. The fire in the hearth crackled gently, casting flickering shadows across the crimson and gold tapestries. The usual chatter of students had quieted as the evening deepened, leaving behind a hush that seemed to wrap the room in a blanket of peace. Near the window, curled up in one of the plush armchairs, Hermione Granger sat with an ancient-looking book balanced on her lap. Her bushy brown hair fell around her face as she flipped through the pages, her eyes scanning each line with quiet curiosity. She had always found comfort in the stillness of the common room, especially when accompanied by a good book. But tonight, it wasn't just any book that held her attention. It was an old, worn tome titled Hogwarts: Forgotten Secrets, discovered while she was reorganizing the library's corner shelves earlier that day. Across from her, Harry Potter sat on the couch, his glasses slightly askew as he leaned back with his arms folded behind his head. He wasn't reading, but watching the flames dance in the fireplace, the warmth of the room making his eyelids heavy. It had been a long day, filled with classes and essays, and the quiet of the evening felt like a well-earned reward. Ron Weasley was sprawled on the rug, his back against the couch, lazily flipping through a Quidditch magazine. His ginger hair caught the firelight, and every so often he'd yawn and stretch, clearly more interested in relaxing than reading. Hermione finally broke the silence, her voice soft and thoughtful. Harry, Ron, did you know there's mention of a potions book that was supposedly lost somewhere in the castle? It belonged to an old Hogwarts student, but there's no record of who, just that it had handwritten notes, improvements on standard potions, and even a few original spells scribbled in the margins. Harry's green eyes flickered toward her, interest piqued. Another magical book lost in Hogwarts? Sounds like something we'd find by accident when we're trying to do something else. Ron chuckled, tossing the magazine aside. Or something that'll drag us into another late-night adventure. Haven't we had enough of those? Hermione smiled, tucking a stray curl behind her ear. I'm not suggesting an adventure, just a quiet search. The last mention of it was near the old potions classroom, back when Snape was a student. If it's there, we'll find it. If not, at least we'll stretch our legs before bed. Harry exchanged a glance with Ron, who sighed dramatically, but was already reaching for his cloak. Fine, but if this turns into us getting caught by Filch again, I'm blaming both of you. Hermione closed her book gently, her expression serene. It's just a peaceful walk, Ron, nothing more. The three friends stood, the warmth of the common room lingering as they stepped through the portrait hole. Outside, the corridors of Hogwarts stretched before them, silent and inviting, bathed in the cool light of the moon. Whatever secrets the castle held, they would discover them together, without rush, without worry, just three friends following the gentle trail of curiosity through the heart of Hogwarts. The soft glow of lanterns lit the quiet corridors of Hogwarts as Harry, Hermione, and Ron made their way down the grand staircase. The usual hum of student chatter had faded with the night, leaving only the occasional creak of old wood and the distant hoot of an owl beyond the windows. The air felt cool and still, as though the castle itself had settled into a peaceful slumber. Hermione led the way, her wand tip glowing faintly with lumos. She held the ancient book from the library close to her chest, occasionally glancing down at a page she had marked earlier. It spoke of a student from decades past who had experimented with potions beyond the standard curriculum, scribbling personal notes into the margins of their potions textbook. That very book, the passage hinted, had been misplaced somewhere near the old potions classroom in the dungeons. Ron yawned, rubbing his eyes as they rounded another corner. Remind me why we're doing this tonight, Hermione. The book's not going anywhere, is it? Hermione smiled, the excitement in her eyes softening her usual persistence. Because sometimes, Ron, discoveries don't wait for daylight. Besides, the castle feels different at night, like it remembers things more clearly. Harry, walking alongside them, nodded thoughtfully. He had always found Hogwarts more magical in the quiet hours, when the walls seemed to whisper forgotten tales and the portraits dozed in their frames, their usual gossiping stilled by sleep. As they approached the entrance to the dungeons, the temperature dropped slightly. The stone walls grew damp, and the faint scent of old parchment and dried herbs lingered in the air. The flickering torchlight cast long, gentle shadows along the corridor, creating an almost dreamlike atmosphere. Here we are, Hermione whispered, stopping outside the old potions classroom. It hadn't been used since Professor Slughorn had moved the lessons to a warmer, more inviting room closer to the main corridors. Now, the heavy wooden door stood closed, dust gathering along its carved edges. Harry reached out, gently pushing the door open. It creaked softly, revealing the dim interior beyond. The room was just as they remembered it, rows of stone tables, empty cauldrons, and shelves lined with dusty jars. But without the bustle of students or the stern presence of a professor, it felt almost like stepping into a memory. They entered quietly, their footsteps muffled by the worn flagstone floor. Hermione's wand light swept across the room, illuminating cobwebbed corners and ancient potion bottles sealed with brittle wax. Ron peered into an empty cauldron, his reflection wavering in the dim light. "All right," Harry murmured. "If I were an old potions book, where would I hide?" Hermione consulted her book, running a finger down the page. "It says the student often worked late, staying behind after lessons to test new ideas. There's mention of a small side cupboard where ingredients were stored. If the book was left behind, it might still be there." They crossed the room slowly, their movements unhurried and deliberate. The cupboard Hermione mentioned was tucked into the far corner, its wooden door slightly ajar. Harry reached for the handle, but as he did, the room shifted, just slightly, like a breath passing through the walls. Ron froze. "Did you feel that?" Hermione nodded, her brow furrowing. "It's like the air moved." Harry glanced around, his hand still on the cupboard handle. The torches along the walls flickered once, then steadied. It wasn't alarming, just peculiar, like the castle itself had turned its attention toward them. Gently, Harry pulled open the cupboard door. Inside, rows of empty glass jars lined the shelves, their labels faded and peeling. Dried lavender crumbled in one corner, while a small tin of crushed moonstone sat untouched beside it. But there, at the very back, almost hidden behind an old pestle and mortar, lay a book. Hermione leaned in, eyes widening. "That's it. Look at the binding. It matches the description." Harry carefully lifted the book from the shelf. The leather cover was cracked with age, the title long worn away. Only faint traces of gold lettering remained, barely visible in the soft light. As he opened the cover, the pages rustled quietly, releasing the faintest scent of dried herbs and ink. "Look," Hermione breathed, pointing to the margins. "Handwritten notes, adjustments to standard recipes, and what's this?" She traced her finger along a line of text scrawled in delicate, looping script. "For those who seek knowledge, follow the trail where moonlight meets stone." Ron frowned. "What's that supposed to mean? Another riddle?" Harry turned the page, but the writing ended there. The rest of the book continued with potion instructions, some familiar, others entirely new, but that one line stood out, like an invitation whispered across time. Hermione's expression softened, her excitement giving way to quiet wonder. "It sounds like a direction. Moonlight in a stone. Somewhere in the castle, maybe?" As if in answer, the torches along the walls dimmed slightly, casting longer shadows across the room. The soft glow of Hermione's wand seemed warmer now, more golden than white. Ron sighed, though there was no real complaint in his tone. I suppose we're not heading back to the common room anytime soon, are we? Harry smiled, closing the book gently. Not if we're following the trail. Come on, let's see where moonlight meets stone. They left the classroom quietly, the book tucked safely under Harry's arm. The corridor outside seemed untouched by the odd shift they had felt earlier, but there was an undeniable sense of quiet anticipation in the air. The castle was awake in its own gentle way, guiding them forward, not with urgency, but with the soft pull of curiosity. Hermione glanced down at the book as they walked. Whoever wrote those notes, they weren't just experimenting with potions. They were searching for something, and they left a trail for anyone willing to follow. Ron chuckled, rubbing his arms against the cool air. Well, they found the right people, didn't they? We've never been good at ignoring a mystery. The three friends moved through the corridors of Hogwarts, their footsteps quiet against the ancient stones. The castle stretched around them, vast and welcoming, as though it had been waiting for someone to pick up the thread of the story once more. And somewhere ahead, where moonlight brushed against weathered stone, the next part of their journey awaited, patient, timeless, and filled with the quiet magic that only Hogwarts could hold. The corridors of Hogwarts stretched long and quiet as Harry, Hermione, and Ron walked side by side, the ancient potions book tucked safely under Harry's arm. The warmth of Hermione's Lumos spell cast gentle, golden light ahead of them, while shadows stretched lazily along the stone walls. The riddle from the book lingered in their minds. For those who seek knowledge, follow the trail where moonlight meets stone. Ron glanced at the high, arched windows as they passed. The moon hung low in the sky, its pale light filtering through the glass and dappling the floor with soft, silvery patches. Moonlight and stone, he murmured, could mean half the castle, really. Hermione's brow furrowed in thought. True, but think about it. If the writer of these notes was experimenting with potions, they'd have wanted privacy, somewhere quiet, away from prying eyes, a place moonlight could reach, but not just any random corridor. Harry nodded, glancing down at the book in his hands. The leather cover felt warm under his fingers, as though the magic within it still lingered after all these years. The astronomy tower? He suggested. It's high up, lots of moonlight. Hermione shook her head slowly. No, too obvious, and too exposed. If they wanted solitude and secrecy, they'd pick somewhere quieter, less frequented. Ron sighed, rubbing his arms against the cool night air. Well, wherever it is, can we find it before I freeze to death? The castle's not exactly cozy at night. Just then, Harry paused, his gaze falling on a narrow window set into the wall ahead. The moonlight poured through it in a perfect beam, illuminating the floor in front of an old, rarely used staircase that spiraled downward. He stepped closer, curiosity tugging at him. The stone steps gleamed faintly, as though polished by countless feet long since vanished. Here, Harry whispered, moonlight, stone, and look. He pointed to the edge of the first step, where something faint shimmered in the light. It was almost like dust, but finer, glimmering softly as it caught the moon's glow. Hermione's eyes widened. Moonstone dust, she breathed, a common ingredient in advanced potions. Someone must have used it to mark the path. Without hesitation, they followed the steps downward, their footsteps echoing gently as they descended into the heart of the castle. The air grew cooler, but not uncomfortably so. It was the kind of chill that spoke of untouched places where time slowed and memories lingered quietly in the corners. At the bottom of the staircase, they found themselves in a narrow corridor, one Harry didn't remember ever exploring before. The walls were smooth and unadorned, the torches along the sides unlit. Yet the moonlight guided them, filtering through occasional high windows and casting soft pools of silver along their path. Whoever left this trail, Hermione murmured, they wanted someone to find it, but only if they knew what to look for. Ron glanced nervously around. As long as it's not leading us to something dangerous, I'm fine with it. You know how Hogwarts likes to spring surprises. Harry smiled faintly. This doesn't feel dangerous, just forgotten, like the castle's sharing an old secret. They continued quietly, the glimmering dust leading them past old wooden doors and silent, slumbering portraits. The paintings here were different, faded and still, as though their inhabitants had long since left or drifted into deeper sleep. It added to the dreamlike quality of the journey, each step measured and calm. Finally, the trail led them to an archway carved into the stone wall, half hidden behind a tattered tapestry depicting brewing cauldrons. The fabric swayed gently, though there was no breeze. Beyond the arch, another set of stairs wound downward, the steps worn smooth by age. Hermione hesitated, glancing at Harry and Ron. This must be it. Are we sure we want to keep going? Harry met her gaze, calm determination in his eyes. We've come this far. If the book led us here, there's something worth finding. Ron sighed, shaking his head with a resigned smile. Why do I even bother asking? Of course we're going in. They stepped through the archway, descending carefully. The air grew warmer now, tinged with the faintest scent of herbs, dried lavender, crushed mint, and something earthier, like damp soil after rain. It was soothing, almost like stepping into a greenhouse at twilight. At the bottom of the stairs, they found themselves in a small, circular chamber. The ceiling arched high above, shaped like the inside of a bottle, with a single round window near the top where moonlight streamed in, illuminating the room in soft silver. Shelves lined the walls, filled with neatly labeled jars, old scrolls, and delicate glass vials. But it was the center of the room that drew their attention. A stone pedestal stood there, smooth and unmarked, except for a shallow indentation in the middle, shaped perfectly to hold a book. The moonlight struck the pedestal directly, making the stone glow softly. Harry exchanged a glance with Hermione, then carefully placed the potions book into the indentation. The moment it settled into place, the room seemed to exhale, a soft sigh of ancient magic stirring after a long sleep. The shelves shimmered faintly, and several of the scrolls gently unfurled, revealing handwritten notes in the same looping script they'd seen in the margins of the book. One scroll drifted toward them as though carried by an invisible hand and landed quietly at Hermione's feet. She picked it up, eyes scanning the page. It's a list of potions, but not just any potions. These are modified versions. The writer wasn't just experimenting, they were refining existing recipes, making them safer, more effective. Look, she pointed to a note in the margin. For healing, not harm, magic should mend, not break. Ron leaned over her shoulder, frowning. Whoever they were careful, thoughtful. Doesn't sound like someone messing around with dangerous magic. Harry nodded slowly. More like someone trying to make sure knowledge didn't get lost. They hid it, but not forever, just until the right people came looking. Hermione smiled softly, rolling the scroll and tucking it into her bag. I think we were meant to find this, to finish what they started, sharing knowledge, not hoarding it. The pedestal glowed once more, and the book's pages fluttered gently before falling still. The moonlight seemed warmer now, more golden than silver, as though the room itself approved of their discovery. Ron stretched, yawning. All right, we found the lost book, uncovered an ancient study room, and learned about a secret potions project. Can we call it a night now? I'm knackered. Harry chuckled, lifting the book from the pedestal. Yeah, I think we've earned some sleep. They made their way back up the stairs, the moonstone dust no longer glimmering along the path. It had served its purpose, guiding seekers to knowledge, and now fading quietly away. The castle walls felt warmer, more welcoming, as though Hogwarts itself had smiled at their success. As they stepped into the main corridor once more, the torches flickered back to life, casting soft, golden light along the walls. The portraits stirred, their inhabitants stretching and yawning as though waking from shared dreams. Hermione glanced back once, her expression thoughtful. It's strange, isn't it? How knowledge can lie hidden for so long, waiting for someone to care enough to find it. Harry nodded, the book safe in his arms. Not strange, just magical. That's Hogwarts for you. And with that, they made their way back to the Gryffindor common room, the castle quieting once more behind them, satisfied that one more of its secrets had been gently, peacefully uncovered. The Gryffindor common room was unusually quiet, as the fire crackled softly, casting long shadows across the plush armchairs and scattered textbooks. Harry, Hermione, and Ron sat close together near the window, the ancient potions book open on the table between them. Outside, the moon hung low, bathing the castle grounds in silver light. Hermione traced her fingers along the elegant, looping handwriting that filled the margins of the book's aged pages. The ink, though faded, still held a faint shimmer under the lantern's glow. For healing, not harm, magic should mend, not break. The same phrase appeared several times, written in different sections of the book, almost like a mantra. It's odd, Hermione murmured, brushing her hair behind her ear. Whoever wrote these notes wasn't just experimenting with advanced potions. They were refining them, trying to perfect each one for practical use. Ron leaned over, squinting at the page. Look at this one, Cura Obscura. Never heard of it. Says here it's supposed to counteract the side effects of common dark magic injuries, like stinging hexes and minor jinxes. Harry frowned thoughtfully. That's useful, but why would someone go to such lengths to keep this hidden? If these potions were meant to help, you'd think they'd be common knowledge. Hermione flipped another page, revealing a faint sketch of a moonlit corridor with a single line written beneath it. Where shadows stretch and silence lingers, answers lie in stillness. Ron groaned, sinking back into the armchair. Great. Another riddle. Why can't secret discoveries ever just say, turn left at the next corridor and open the door? Hermione ignored him, already on her feet. It's not just a riddle, Ron. It's directions. Think about it. Where in the castle do shadows stretch the longest and silence lingers most? Harry's gaze drifted toward the window where the moonlight stretched across the courtyard below. The dungeons, he said quietly, near the old potion storerooms. Hardly anyone goes down there after hours. Ron sat up, alarmed. The dungeons? That's practically Snape's old territory. You want us to sneak around down there in the middle of the night? Hermione gave him a patient smile. We've done riskier things, Ron, and this time it's not about danger, it's about discovery. This book didn't fall into our hands by accident. Someone wanted it found, but only by those who'd understand its value. Harry nodded, determination settling over him like a warm cloak. Let's go. We'll be careful. Just a quick look. The trio gathered their wands, extinguished the lantern, and slipped quietly out of the common room, the fat lady's portrait grumbling sleepily as she swung shut behind them. The castle's corridors were hushed, the usual hum of bustling students replaced by the deep stillness of night. Only the soft patter of their footsteps and the occasional flicker of torchlight disturbed the tranquility. As they descended the main staircase, Harry glanced at the Marauder's map, the familiar parchment glowing faintly in his hand. Tiny labeled dots marked the positions of Filch, Mrs. Norris, and a few wandering prefects, all thankfully far from their path. Clear for now, Harry whispered, folding the map and tucking it into his pocket. The air grew cooler as they approached the entrance to the dungeons, the stone walls gleaming faintly under Hermione's Lumos spell. Shadows danced at the edges of the light, stretching and shifting with each step they took. Ron shivered. Why is it always colder down here? It's like the castle itself doesn't want us poking around. Hermione paused, holding up the book. The corridor in this sketch, it matches this passage here. She pointed to a narrow hallway, branching off to the left, one they'd rarely had reason to explore during their school days. The moonlight filtering through a small, high window illuminated the floor ahead, revealing faint scuff marks as though someone had passed through recently. But the dust along the walls remained undisturbed, suggesting the path had been overlooked for years. Harry stepped forward, wand raised. This is it. Stay close. They moved quietly, the corridor narrowing until they reached a small wooden door set into the stone, its surface worn smooth with age. No lock or handle adorned it, only a single carved symbol at the center, a crescent moon encircled by tiny stars. Hermione frowned, brushing her fingertips over the carving. It's not a common symbol, but it reminds me of ancient alchemical seals, usually marking places of study or experimentation. Ron leaned closer, squinting at the faint inscription below the crescent. Aperio mentis, open the mind. Without hesitation, Hermione raised her wand. Aperio mentis, she whispered. The symbol glowed softly, the light spreading outward in delicate tendrils until the entire door shimmered like moonlight on water. With a gentle click, the door swung inward, revealing a narrow spiral staircase descending into quiet darkness. Ron sighed dramatically. Of course, more stairs. Why can't secret rooms ever be on the ground floor? Harry grinned. Come on, adventure waits. The staircase wound downward, the air growing warmer as they descended. Soft golden light flickered from somewhere below, casting elongated shadows along the curved walls. The faint scent of herbs, lavender, mint, and something earthier, like an aged parchment, filled the air. At the bottom, they stepped into a circular chamber, much smaller than they'd expected. Shelves lined the walls, filled with neatly labeled jars, ancient books, and delicate glass vials. A single wooden table stood at the center, bathed in the gentle glow of floating candles. But it was the open book on the table that caught Hermione's attention. She hurried forward, eyes wide. This handwriting, it matches the notes in our book. Her fingers hovered above the page, careful not to touch the fragile parchment. It's a research journal. The author wasn't just refining potions, they were documenting discoveries, trying to make complex magic accessible to students and healers alike. Harry picked up a nearby vial, the liquid inside shimmering between pale blue and soft gold. Look at this. It's labeled Sana Lux, Healing Light. I've never seen it mentioned in any standard potion texts. Ron, meanwhile, had discovered a rolled-up scroll tucked into the corner of the table. Carefully, he unrolled it, revealing a map of the castle marked with faint, flickering runes. This shows all the hidden study rooms, he murmured. Places like this, tucked away and forgotten. Hermione's face lit up. It's like an entire network of secret labs and libraries, designed for quiet study and safe experimentation. The original writer must have been part of a group, students or teachers, who wanted to protect this knowledge without risking misuse. Harry nodded, his gaze drifting to the softly glowing candles. They didn't hide it to keep it secret forever, just until the right people came looking. The room seemed to hum gently, as though the castle itself approved of their discovery. The air grew warmer, the light softer, wrapping around them like a comforting blanket. Ron stretched, yawning. Well, we found the Lost Potions book, uncovered an ancient study room, and learned about a secret network of magical labs. Can we call it a night now? I'm about 5 minutes from falling asleep on my feet. Hermione smiled, closing the journal carefully and tucking it into her bag. Yes, Ron, we can go. But this... She glanced around the room, eyes shining with quiet wonder. This isn't just about tonight. It's a reminder that learning never really ends. There's always more to discover if we're willing to look. Harry extinguished the floating candles with a flick of his wand, leaving only the soft moonlight filtering through the small, arched window near the ceiling. And sometimes, he added, the best discoveries aren't the ones that change the world. They're the ones that remind us why we fell in love with magic in the first place. As they ascended the spiral stairs, the door behind them swung gently shut, the moon symbol fading back into quiet stillness. The castle seemed to settle around them, content that one more of its secrets had been uncovered, not through ambition or greed, but through quiet curiosity and friendship. Back in the common room, the fire had burned low, its embers glowing like tiny stars. Ron collapsed into an armchair with a sigh of relief, while Hermione carefully placed the journal and potions book side by side on the table. Harry paused by the window, looking out over the moonlit grounds. The castle stood silent and strong, its ancient stones holding countless stories, waiting for the right moment and the right hearts to reveal them. "Good night, Hogwarts," he murmured with a smile, before joining his friends near the fire. And as the warmth of the room wrapped around them, sleep came easily, carrying dreams of moonlit corridors, forgotten knowledge, and the quiet, enduring magic of discovery. The flickering light from Hermione's wand cast long, wavering shadows as the trio stood at the threshold of the secret study chamber. The circular room was lined with shelves of ancient books and labeled jars, their contents shimmering faintly in the dim light. Floating candles hovered near the ceiling, illuminating the room with a soft golden glow. Ron scratched his head, eyes darting around the chamber. "So, what now? We found the room, we found the book. Do we just leave?" Hermione shot him a look, her curiosity already pulling her toward the central table where the open journal lay. "Of course not, Ron. This room wasn't just a hiding place. It was a workspace, somewhere the original writer refined their potions and recorded discoveries. There's more here than just one book." Harry stepped closer to the shelves, running his fingers along the spines of worn, leather-bound tomes. Each had a delicate golden rune etched onto its spine, some glowing faintly under the light of his wand. "These aren't standard library books," he murmured. "Look, Ars Medicamenta, Herbae Occultae, Luminaria Potentia. They're specialized advanced texts." Hermione's eyes gleamed. "This is practically a private potions library. Whoever worked here was collecting rare knowledge, experimenting, and improving known spells and potions. Look at the labels on these jars: essence of moondew, crushed frost blossom, phoenix feather ash. Ingredients I've only ever read about in advanced alchemy books." Ron, less impressed by rare ingredients, nudged a small wooden box near the edge of the table. It opened with a soft click, revealing several small vials, each labeled in the same elegant handwriting as the notes in their potions book. One vial, filled with a softly glowing blue liquid, caught his eye. "Sopor Lux," he read aloud. "Sleeping light?" Hermione leaned over, brows furrowing. "That's not in any standard potion syllabus. If I'm reading these notes right, it's meant to calm nightmares and promote restful sleep without suppressing dreams." Brilliant. Harry picked up another vial, this one containing a faintly shimmering silver liquid. "Memoria Clara," he read quietly. "Clear memory. It's supposed to help sharpen recall, especially for complex spells and advanced studies." Ron sighed, dropping into the nearest chair. "All right, I'll admit it. This place is more than just old books and dust. But what do we do with all this? We can't exactly tell Professor McGonagall we've stumbled into a secret potions lab." Hermione flipped through the journal, her finger pausing on a page with another hand-drawn map of Hogwarts. Certain areas were circled in faint blue ink, with small notes scribbled in the margins. We don't have to tell anyone yet. Look, this map shows other hidden study spaces like this one. The writer wasn't working alone. There must have been a network of students or scholars quietly studying advanced magic, refining spells and potions to make them safer and more effective. Harry glanced at the softly glowing runes along the walls. It's like they were creating a hidden curriculum, teaching themselves what the official coursework couldn't cover. Ron stretched, eyeing the shelves warily. That's all well and good, but it doesn't explain why they stopped. If this was such a great idea, why didn't it carry on? Why did the room seal itself off? Hermione nodded thoughtfully. That's the real question, and I think the answer lies here. She tapped the journal, turning to a page near the end where the handwriting grew more hurried and uneven. The last few entries mentioned something called the unfinished elixir. The writer believed they were close to perfecting a potion that could stabilize magical energy, preventing spell backlash and reducing the risk of magical exhaustion. Harry frowned. That sounds incredibly useful, especially for healers and students pushing their magical limits. Hermione nodded. Exactly, but the last note ends abruptly. Final trial unsuccessful, effects unpredictable, further testing required, caution advised. And then nothing, no signature, no conclusion. It's like they abandoned the work suddenly. Ron shifted uncomfortably, or something went wrong. Silence settled over the room, broken only by the faint crackle of candle flames. The weight of unfinished work and unanswered questions hung in the air like an unspoken challenge. Harry straightened, determination flickering in his eyes. We can't leave it like this. If this potion was meant to help, we should at least understand why it was left unfinished. Maybe the ingredients were unstable, or the brewing process had risks they couldn't overcome. Hermione nodded, already scanning the shelves for relevant texts. If we can retrace their steps carefully, we might find the missing link, and if it's too dangerous, we'll stop. But understanding the process itself could still be valuable. Ron groaned, but there was a resigned smile on his face. I knew it. I just knew that we'd end up brewing some long-lost potion by candlelight. Fine, but if we accidentally blow up the castle, I'm blaming both of you. Hermione rolled her eyes. Honestly, Ron, we're not brewing anything tonight. First, we research thoroughly. The next few hours passed quietly, the trio immersed in their task. Harry scoured the shelves for books on stabilizing magical compounds, while Hermione meticulously cross-referenced the journal's notes with modern texts on potion safety. Ron, despite his grumbling, proved surprisingly adept at organizing ingredients, arranging them by category and freshness. As they worked, the room itself seemed to respond. The candles burned steadily, their flames flickering gently whenever someone approached the central table. The air remained pleasantly warm, and the faint hum of magic provided a soothing backdrop to their whispered discussions. Hermione paused, holding up a slim, emerald green volume titled Potiones Stabilitatis, The Art of Balanced Brews. This might be it. Look, There's an entire chapter on binding volatile ingredients without compromising potency. Harry leaned over, reading aloud. Key to stability lies in counterbalance. For every energizing component, an equal calming agent must be introduced, ensuring equilibrium throughout the brewing process. Ron blinked. So, if you add something powerful, you need to balance it with something soothing, like adding sugar to strong tea. Hermione smiled. Exactly, Ron. And if the original writer overlooked that principle, it would explain why their final trial failed. They were focused on maximizing effectiveness without tempering the potion's magical charge. Harry nodded slowly. Then the next step is clear. We need to see if the ingredients for this counterbalance are still here. Systematically, they searched the shelves and storage drawers. Lavender sprigs, powdered moonstone, and crushed peppermint were easy to find. But two ingredients mentioned in the stabilization text, silverthorn extract and essence of dreamshade, proved elusive. Hermione frowned, checking the labels on the jars again. Dreamshade is rare but not dangerous in small amounts. It's used in calming drafts, but silverthorn, that's trickier. It's potent and slightly reactive if not handled properly. Ron, rummaging in a lower cabinet, suddenly held up a small, dust-covered jar. Would this be it? The label's nearly faded, but I can make out silver something. Hermione took the jar carefully, inspecting the pale silver powder inside. Yes, that's it. And it looks stable, though it's aged. This might be exactly what the original writer was missing. Harry glanced toward the central table, where the journal still lay open, its last entry like an unfinished sentence. We don't need to brew the potion tonight, but we can document everything we've found, cross-reference the process, and leave clear notes for whoever comes after us. The writer wanted this knowledge to help others, not to be forgotten. Hermione smiled, already pulling out parchment and quill. Agreed. Let's finish what they started, safely and with full understanding. Ron yawned, stretching, and preferably before sunrise. I'm all for magical discoveries, but I'd rather not explain to McGonagall why we're sneaking out of the dungeons at dawn. As they documented their findings, the candles flickered softly, as though approving their cautious approach. The room, once a forgotten relic of unfinished work, now felt alive with purpose once more, a quiet testament to the enduring magic of curiosity, friendship, and responsible discovery. The candles flickered as Hermione scribbled notes on parchment, cross-referencing the stabilization text with the potion's journal. Harry leaned over the table, carefully arranging ingredients, while Ron sat cross-legged on the floor, sorting through the last of the storage drawers. The room's soft hum of magic grew more noticeable as they worked, like the heartbeat of the space itself. We're close, Hermione murmured, tapping her quill against her chin. The silverthorn extract and dreamshade essence, those were the missing stabilizers. If the original writer had known to add these, the potion wouldn't have destabilized. Harry nodded, glancing toward the open journal. But why didn't they figure it out? They were clearly talented, advanced enough to brew an experimental elixir and document the process in detail. Ron, pushing aside an empty vial, frowned. Maybe they ran out of time, or maybe... He hesitated, Maybe they did figure it out and didn't want anyone else to know. Hermione looked up sharply. You think they hid the solution on purpose? Ron shrugged. If the potion was powerful enough to stabilize magic, imagine what someone with bad intentions could do with it. Maybe they realized the risk and decided it was better left incomplete. Silence settled over the room as they considered the possibility. The journal's final entry, hastily scrawled and unfinished, seemed less like a failure and more like a warning. Harry broke the silence. There's only one way to know for sure. If we recreate the final stage of the potion safely with the stabilizers, we'll see whether it works and why it was abandoned. Hermione hesitated, glancing at the glowing runes along the walls. We'd have to be extremely careful. If the potion was unstable without the counterbalance, even a small mistake could— We won't make a mistake, Harry interrupted gently. We have the notes, the right ingredients, and the knowledge the original writer lacked. If we do this slowly, methodically, we can uncover the truth without risking anything. Ron sighed, getting to his feet. Well, if we're going to solve a decades-old mystery, we might as well do it properly. What's the first step? Hermione flipped to the final brewing instructions, her voice steady as she read aloud. We'll need to brew a base of moon dew and powdered moonstone first. It acts as a magical buffer, keeping the more reactive ingredients from destabilizing. Harry moved to the workbench, carefully measuring out the pale blue moondew liquid, while Ron crushed moonstone into fine dust. The cauldron, long unused, warmed under a soft golden flame, its heat perfectly controlled by the room's subtle enchantments. As the base simmered, Hermione added lavender sprigs and peppermint leaves, their calming properties enhancing the potion's soothing effect. The liquid turned a pale silver, swirling gently as though stirred by an unseen hand. Next, Hermione continued, we introduce the active components, the ones that originally caused instability: phoenix feather ash, essence of starflower, and crystallized willow sap, but this time we'll add the stabilizers alongside them. Harry nodded, carefully adding the ash first. The potion shimmered, deepening to a soft violet. Hermione followed with the starflower essence, its faintly floral scent filling the room. Finally, Ron added the crystallized willow sap, and the potion flickered like moonlight on water. Hermione's hand hovered over the silverthorn extract. This is it. If the stabilizer works, the potion should turn a clear, sky blue color. If it doesn't, then we stop immediately, Harry finished. Go ahead, Hermione. With practiced precision, Hermione added 3 drops of silverthorn extract, followed by a single drop of dreamshade essence. The potion hissed softly, the violet hue fading to pale silver, then shifting, slowly, almost reluctantly, into a perfect translucent blue. Ron let out a low whistle. Well, would you look at that? It actually worked. Hermione's eyes widened. The potion is stable, completely stable. This is what the original writer was trying to achieve. Harry dipped a ladle into the cauldron, watching the liquid swirl smoothly, without any sign of fizzing or separation. We did it. We finished their work. But the question remained, why had the original writer abandoned the project if the solution was this simple? Hermione flipped through the final pages of the journal, her brow furrowed. There has to be more, a reason they stopped. The last entry mentions a test. Final trial unsuccessful, effects unpredictable. But if instability was the only problem, and we've solved that. Ron picked up the ladle, inspecting the shimmering liquid. Maybe the effects were too strong, even when stable. Like, what if it didn't just stabilize magic, but amplified it? Harry exchanged a glance with Hermione. It was possible. If the potion enhanced magical abilities beyond safe limits, even stability wouldn't make it risk-free. Hermione hesitated, then gently dipped the tip of her wand into the potion. The liquid clung to the wood like dew, glowing faintly. A tiny test, she murmured, just enough to see what it does. She whispered a simple spell, Lumos, and the tip of her wand flared to life. But instead of the usual soft glow, the light was brilliantly white, almost like a miniature star. Hermione gasped, shielding her eyes. It's enhancing spell output, Harry said, awestruck, not just stabilizing, amplifying. Hermione quickly ended the spell, the light fading back to normal. That's why they stopped. The potion worked, but it made magic stronger than intended. Imagine someone using this for powerful hexes or dangerous charms. It would be uncontrollable. Ron stepped back from the cauldron, eyes wide. Blimey, no wonder they abandoned it. This isn't just a stabilizer, it's a magical amplifier. Harry nodded slowly. The writer didn't fail. They chose to hide it, to prevent it from falling into the wrong hands. They left the last entry vague as a deterrent, so no one would try finishing the potion without understanding the risks. Hermione carefully extinguished the flame under the cauldron. Then we should do the same. We've proven the potion works, but it's too dangerous to leave intact. Harry reached for the vials they'd prepared earlier. We'll store it securely, with clear warnings about its effects. No one should stumble upon this without knowing the full story. As they bottled the potion, the room seemed to grow quieter, as though the ancient magic itself approved of their cautious approach. The last vial sealed with a soft click, and the cauldron emptied, leaving only faint traces of silver along its rim. Hermione placed the journal atop the sealed vials, her handwriting neatly summarizing their findings. Potion stabilized, but amplification effect poses significant risk. Handle with extreme caution. Knowledge preserved, but brewing not advised. The trio stood in silence for a moment, the weight of their discovery settling around them. They had uncovered a secret long forgotten, completed work left unfinished, not out of failure, but out of wisdom. Ron stretched, breaking the quiet. Well, that's enough excitement for one night. Can we please get back to the common room before Filch finds us? Harry chuckled, pocketing the final vial. Agreed. Let's leave this room as we found it, intact, but undisturbed. As they stepped away from the workbench, the floating candles dimmed, one by one, until only the soft light of their wands remained. The runes along the walls flickered briefly, then faded, as though the room itself was returning to slumber. Hermione glanced back at the sealed vials and carefully closed journal. Whoever started this research, they'd be proud to know the truth was uncovered responsibly. The real victory wasn't finishing the potion, it was understanding when to stop. Harry nodded, tightening his grip on his wand. Sometimes the greatest magic is knowing when knowledge is enough. With quiet steps, they exited the hidden chamber, the door sealing softly behind them. The castle's familiar corridors stretched ahead, moonlight filtering through tall windows. And as they made their way back to Gryffindor Tower, the hum of ancient magic faded into silence, its secrets preserved, its dangers safely contained. The soft click of the chamber door closing behind them echoed quietly down the corridor. The cool stone walls of Hogwarts seemed to sigh in relief, as though the castle itself had watched the ancient secret uncovered and, at last, laid to rest. Harry, Hermione, and Ron stood in the dimly lit hallway, their wands casting warm, golden glows that flickered against the worn tapestries and smooth flagstone floor. For a moment, none of them spoke. The weight of their discovery, the lost potions book, the completed elixir, and the truth behind its abandonment, hung in the air like the last notes of a fading song. Hermione broke the silence first, her voice soft and thoughtful. It's strange, isn't it, how knowledge can be both powerful and dangerous. We always think discovery is the end goal, but sometimes it's knowing when not to use that knowledge that matters most. Harry nodded, adjusting the strap of his satchel where the carefully sealed vials now rested, safely tucked away. We finished what the original writer started, but we also understood why they stopped. That's more important than brewing a perfect potion. Ron, ever the pragmatist, let out a long sigh. Well, as long as no one's accidentally turning into a magical powerhouse or blowing up the dungeon, I'd say we've done Hogwarts a favor. Can we please get back to the common room now? I'm knackered. The three friends began their quiet journey through the castle's shadowy corridors, their footsteps muffled by thick rugs and the hush of midnight stillness. Hogwarts, always alive with subtle enchantments, seemed calmer than usual, as though the castle itself approved of their decision to preserve the secret rather than exploit it. They passed through familiar hallways, the fourth floor shortcut behind the tapestry of Barnabas the Barmy, the winding staircase near the Charms classroom that occasionally decided to lead somewhere entirely different. Tonight, however, the castle seemed content to guide them gently home, each turn smooth and predictable, as though Hogwarts recognized the peaceful conclusion of their adventure. As they climbed the final staircase toward Gryffindor Tower, Hermione glanced down at the journal tucked under her arm, the very book that had sparked their entire journey. I'll add the final notes to the research section. No recipe, just the history of the discovery and the warning about its effects. That way, future students can learn from the past without being tempted to repeat it. Harry smiled. Good idea. It's better as a lesson than a temptation. The fat lady's portrait swung into view, her expression one of mild curiosity as she eyed their tired faces. Out late again, are we? Another grand adventure, I suppose. Ron grinned. Something like that. Don't worry, no trolls this time. The fat lady chuckled, stretching lazily in her frame. Well, at least you didn't wake the whole castle. Password? Woolly socks, Hermione supplied, and the portrait swung open without further comment. The warmth of the Gryffindor common room enveloped them as they stepped inside. The fire in the hearth had burned down to glowing embers, casting a soft golden light across the room's plush armchairs and scattered books. The hum of quiet magic, the kind that made Hogwarts feel like home, wrapped around them like a familiar blanket. Ron collapsed into the nearest armchair with an exaggerated groan. I'm never looking at another potion again. At least not until tomorrow's class. Hermione, don't even think about suggesting we research anything until I've had at least 8 hours of sleep. Hermione rolled her eyes, but smiled, settling into her usual corner near the fire. She'd placed the journal on the side table, its cover catching the firelight for a moment before dimming once more. Don't worry, Ron. I think we've earned a night off. Harry stood by the window, gazing out at the moonlit grounds. The forbidden forest stretched like a dark sea beyond the castle walls, and the lake shimmered under the silver light. Everything looked peaceful, undisturbed, unchanged, yet somehow more meaningful after their quiet triumph. It's funny, Harry mused, his voice soft, how something as small as a forgotten book can lead to something so much bigger. Not just the potion, but understanding why some secrets are meant to stay hidden. Ron, already half asleep in his chair, muttered, deep thoughts for someone who's clearly not tired enough. Harry chuckled, shaking his head, and turned back toward the common room. The warmth, the familiar scent of old parchment and hearth smoke, the gentle crackle of the fire, it all felt reassuringly normal, as though Hogwarts itself had embraced the resolution of another quiet chapter in its long magical history. Hermione stretched and stood, her movements slow and deliberate, as though shaking off the weight of the night's adventure. Come on, Harry, let's call it a night. Tomorrow's another day, and Hogwarts will have plenty more mysteries waiting for us. Harry nodded, extinguishing the last few candles with a murmured knocks. As the common room dimmed into soft shadows, the trio climbed the stairs to their dormitories, the castle's heartbeat steady and calm around them. And somewhere, deep within Hogwarts's ancient walls, the echoes of the past settled into peaceful slumber, no longer restless, no longer waiting for answers. Just quiet, enduring magic, resting alongside those who understood that sometimes the greatest power lies not in discovery, but in knowing when to let the mystery be. The Gryffindor common room had grown quiet, the last flickers of the hearth casting soft shadows across the worn rugs and deep armchairs. The enchanted ceiling above, faintly mirroring the night sky outside, shimmered with scattered stars. The castle itself seemed to breathe in unison with its sleeping students, its ancient stones holding the warmth of countless peaceful nights. Harry leaned back in his chair, the soft fabric molding to his form, as the weight of the night's adventure gently slipped from his shoulders. The once lost potions book now rested quietly on the side table, its secrets no longer pressing, no longer urgent. Just another piece of Hogwarts' endless history, found, understood, and carefully returned to rest. Hermione, curled up with a blanket near the fire, smiled faintly as she watched the flames dance. It's funny, she murmured, her voice soft and dreamy, how every answer we find seems to remind us that the real magic isn't just in discovery, but in the quiet moments afterward. Ron, half asleep on the couch, let out a contented sigh. As long as those quiet moments involve a warm common room and no for midnight adventures, I'm perfectly happy. Harry chuckled, the sound light and easy. He glanced around, taking in the familiar, cozy surroundings, the tapestry lined walls, the scattered chess pieces from an unfinished game, and the gentle hum of protective spells woven into the very fabric of the room. It was home, safe and warm, a place where even the grandest mysteries could wait until morning. Outside the window, the moon hung low, casting silver light over the snow-dusted grounds. The forbidden forest stood in serene stillness, and the black lake shimmered like liquid glass under the starlight. Everything was as it should be, quiet, peaceful, and untouched by the urgency of the day. Hermione yawned, stretching like a contented cat. Come on, Harry. Time for bed. Hogwarts will still be here tomorrow, and so will all its secrets. Harry nodded, extinguishing the last candle with a whispered "Nox." The room dimmed into a gentle twilight, the embers of the fire glowing like tiny, slumbering stars. As they climbed the spiral staircase to their dormitories, the castle seemed to eddy around them, its ancient heart beating in time with their own slowing breaths. And as sleep claimed them, Hogwarts itself stood watch, a silent guardian of dreams, promise, and peace.